Hi, everybody, and welcome to the first edition of What's It To You? I'm Carter Woodhill alongside Jack Worth, and today's show we'll be talking about the Patriots' big win over the New Orleans Saints, Jason Kidd's future as head coach of the Brooklyn Nets, and who might win the World Series come the end of October. But we're going to start with Eli Manning. Nobody since 1991 has thrown more interceptions in his first 6 games of the season than Eli, and he's got the Giants off to their first 0-6 start to a year since 1976. Jack, Eli says that he's afraid that he's not doing his part to help his team win. How much of the blame do you think falls on his shoulders?
Well, I mean, he's the quarterback, so right away, obviously he's the first person you look to. But I think the Giants situation, you know, when they were first losing those games to Dallas and they were losing to Denver, the first thing that popped out to me was the offensive line. Because, I mean, the running game has nothing going. Right now, Brandon Jacobs is the running back. But even before Jacobs took over, David Wilson, you can look at the fumbling issues, but he just wasn't getting yards. And I'm a David Wilson guy. I think David Wilson has talent. So the fact that he's not getting any rushing yards, to me, I look at the offensive line. In that Carolina game, week 3, Eli was hurried within 2 seconds every time he dropped back. So that offensive line, to me, is the first problem. And then when you look further, and even ignoring the defense for right now, on offense, Eli has to start making better decisions.
It just seems to me that Tom Coughlin does not trust David Wilson at all. and then when you have Brandon Jacobs as your best option at running back, that's really a big issue. And you're absolutely right. If your quarterback is getting sacked as many times as Eli Manning was in that game against the Panthers, you can't expect him to make big fourth quarter plays at all. But at the same time, that interception on Thursday night was arguably something that Eli Manning of Super Bowl fame would not have done. And I know that there are a lot of other issues with this Giants team, but those are issues that Eli Manning was able to overcome in previous years.
I agree with you. And when, someone mentioned to me earlier, when the Giants lose, Eli gets too much blame, and when they win, he gets too much credit. Well, when the Giants win, usually Eli gets just as much credit as he deserves because Eli is a great quarterback on a below-average team in years past. And this year, the team is playing their below-average self, but Eli is playing like a below-average quarterback. And as Giants fans, I think we need to start to accept that fact that Eli, who has been an up-and-down quarterback for his whole career, who had a season or two where instead of up and down, he was just up, is playing like a 2006 Eli Manning, where he's just throwing the ball up there.
But do you think there are better days ahead? I mean, 2006 Eli Manning became 2007 Eli Manning. Do you think it could happen again, next year or in a couple of years?
I feel like they have to.
Mm-hmm.
It baffles me as to what happened to this team, and I sort of don't even want to believe that it can't get any better in the future. But I think Eli's play, he will turn around. I think right now, Eli's a confidence quarterback, so when Eli doesn't get time and he thinks that he has to start to do everything and he starts throwing interceptions and he gets down on himself, he throws more interceptions. Because when he doesn't trust himself, he's a risk-reward quarterback, so when he doesn't trust himself, he's going to still keep going out there, and that's when you see him start to air out balls, start to throw interceptions on balls he just really shouldn't throw.
And it must hurt even more for Giants fans knowing that the Patriots are doing so well this year.
And I think what hurts the most is that how the Patriots are doing it is in such agonizing fashion where you watch their games and you go, why are they winning?
I mean, that victory against the Saints, that's a big win for the Patriots, and that last second touchdown. But the question, people have been calling it a season-defining win for New England. Do you think that's true?
Well, what is a big win? I mean, winning the Super Bowl is a big win. That's a win that is big.
Really?
But winning a regular season game it's big if you count getting one win in the standings big, and that's what the Patriots got against Saints. They got one win in the standings. They're still in first place. I don't think you're going to find a football fan that's going to bet against Patriots to win the AFC East. So, I mean, I guess they're beating a good team. I understand that, but it's so early in the season. I don't think I can't call anything a big win.
But if the Patriots go, let's say, just for the sake of argument, the Patriots go on and they win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
People are going to look back at this Week 6 comeback against the New Orleans Saints and miss last-second touchdown by Tompkins and say, this was the moment when people realized, man, this Pats team is for real. because they can beat the team like the New Orleans Saints.
I think for people looking back on the season, maybe, but I don't think I think if they lost that game, they would have I think they could win the Super Bowl if they lost that game. I think they could win the Super Bowl if they won that game. And they did. And I think any team that has Tom Brady at quarterback and Bill Belichick coaching, they never need a win to tell themselves that they're good enough. I think, if anything, they need a loss sometimes to tell themselves that they're not as good as they think they are, because those two guys have so much confidence in their ability and their team that every year they know that they're the best and that they could go out there and they can win a Super Bowl. And whether it's justified or not, I don't think a win over the Saints Week 6, told Brady that he could win this year. I think that just reassured him his belief that he could win.
But this has not been an ordinary year for the Patriots, though. I mean, Tom Brady lost his top 4 targets from last season. It's so I think, I don't know. I feel like this is something that reassures, if anything, Patriots fans.
I think it reassures the fan base. I think the loss of receivers has been a lot. There's been a lot of talk about that, but if you look at Tom Brady, who is a guy that only recently, I think 2007 as the first year that Brady had an elite bunch of receivers. When he won the Super Bowl, he didn't have a great receiving core. He's going to practice with them every day. He's going to make sure that they're working as hard as they can after practice every day. Brady's throwing them 200 balls, and they're going to be better by the end of the season. And I think Brady believes in them because, honestly, I think the Patriots organization as a whole wouldn't put that team on the field if they didn't believe Brady could lead them to a title.
Maybe it was Eli Manning. It'd be a bigger deal. Well, it's time for the part of the show where we look at your questions from social media. Remember, you can always send us a question on Facebook at our Facebook page at facebook.com/Carter and Jack, or you can ask us on Twitter using the hashtag What's It To You. Our question comes from Dan Zona today. It's 3 words long.
It's to be neighbors.
World Series pick.
Dan Zona wants to know my World Series pick. Well, coming from 2 diehard Yankee fans, I think that the only logical World Series pick here is the Red Sox.
I agree. It's a saddening fact for a lot of people here in New York, but I don't see how the Red Sox lineup can be stopped. I don't see it. For a lineup that has Will Middlebrooks hitting at the bottom of the order, I don't want to face Will Middlebrooks in a clutch situation. He's their number 9 hitter. That says so much about, it's a cliche. Well, they've got a great lineup 1 to 9, but it's absolutely true when you're talking about the Boston Red Sox and their pitching. It's not as good as some of the other teams that are left in the playoffs. I don't think it matters. This offense can put up runs.
It's true. And I think when you look at, when you say a team can beat you 1 through 9, like Carter said, that's a phrase that's thrown around a lot. What does it really mean? But I think for the Red Sox, it means exactly what it is. There's nobody in that Red Sox lineup that you can look at and just say, okay, I got an out here. They're too dangerous. Playing at Fenway Park, at Hitters Park, I don't see a team right now out there that can beat the Red Sox because I don't see a team that has elite pitching. I see a couple teams that have strong pitching, strong pitchers, but to counter a lineup like this, you need to throw out an ace every night. Mm. And it's really been interesting to see what happened to this team last year. And, you bring in a new manager, and the Red Sox really took off. And, I'm a Yankee fan, so I hate to say this, but, more power to the Red Sox. Have had a great season. I don't see anyone topping the World Series.
Though the Beards don't look very
Oh, the Beards are awful.
Beards, if you're a Red Sox fan, they must look great.
If you're a Red Sox fan, they're the lovable New Englanders. Yeah. But if you're anywhere else, they just look like dirty.
No. Well, we're watching soccer, right?
We're watching soccer. Right now. We're going to focus. I know World Cup qualifiers have been all the rage in world soccer. We're going to focus right now on New York soccer, Major League Soccer. Red Bulls, of course, threatening for their first ever trophy and the Supporter Shield and hopefully the MLS Cup. But in a couple of years, the New York Red Bulls are not going to be the only team in New York. In fact, there actually might be a team in New York. New York City FC, joint purchase by the New York Yankees and Manchester City, will be opening play in 2015 at Yankee Stadium, which is a controversial venue to say the least. And it's gonna tear New York soccer fans in terms of loyalties. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that this is a really cool chance for the New York Red Bulls, who obviously don't play in New York, they play in Harrison, New Jersey. It's a great chance to have a New York versus New Jersey rivalry. I think you can turn this into something like Devils Rangers, where you've got a team from New Jersey and a team from New York, and you can create a great rivalry that way. I don't see the point, if you're the New York Red Bulls, of trying to pretend that you're in New York if there's a team that's actually within the city limits and that's playing at the most iconic stadium in the city. I don't see why you would even try to do that.
Well, it certainly creates an awkward situation for,
to say the least.
For Red Bull and how they want to manage this rivalry, because I think to them it doesn't look good if they've been the New York franchise since the league's inception. They were one of the first teams in MLS. They were an original club as the New York Metro Stars. It doesn't look good if you immediately run away and say, okay, we're New Jersey now. I think it's sort of conceding, which is not what the Red Bulls want to do. I think they're going to want to implant that we're the old team. This is our territory. This is our New York City. And if you're gonna take it from us, you're gonna have to be better than us.
But I don't feel like New York City is their territory, though. They don't play in New York.
I think if you ask the Red Bulls, I think it is. I don't know as in terms of the fan base, but the Red Bulls have a large fan base from New Jersey.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Red Bulls have a large New Jersey fan base.
It's most of their fan base, I would think. I mean,
I think what this comes down to is, can New York get behind New York City FC? So if New York City FC, which is what they're trying to do, can get that New York City fan base that loves soccer to really come out, and they're playing at a 55,000 seat stadium in Yankee Stadium, so that shows what their expectations are like.
it's going to be great.
But I don't know, once they build a soccer-specific stadium, if they're going to be playing in Queens or if they're going to be playing in Brooklyn, it sort of becomes the same situation as Harrison, where they're just inside the city limits, but it's still not. It's not in the city.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're inside the city limits, it makes the claim that you're a New York team a lot easier one. And I think if you're playing at Yankee Stadium, it's just great.
I want to talk about Yankee Stadium for a second because
I love the Yankee Stadium idea. I mean,
I don't like the Yankee Stadium idea.
When they built the new Yankee Stadium, they made it so that it could be a baseball stadium, a football stadium, a soccer stadium. This stadium is built to house multiple sports.
Well, they could, obviously.
I think
soccer games. They've had soccer games at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
My concerns are, attendance. It's a 55,000 seat stadium. New York City, if they don't fill it, it just doesn't look professional. And I think MLS has struggled with that the last couple of years, where the viability of the league has been growing, but they still feel like they need to convince people that they're a big-time league. So when you're playing at a stadium that has 20,000 empty seats on a good day, or the baseball season and the soccer season are running side by side, if they're playing and you got the pitcher's mound and the sandy infield displayed, it doesn't look it looks minor league. And I don't know how New York City FC is going to react to that.
I think if you're watching it on TV and you see that it's a soccer game at Yankee Stadium, I think that's gonna. I don't think it's gonna look minor league. If you're playing at Yankee Stadium, if this was if this was Citi Field, let's say, it would be different. But the fact that it's Yankee Stadium, it's this ground that so many people just hold really dear. I don't think that's going to look unprofessional.
Now, are they going to leave the sand on the field?
I don't know. The details haven't been ironed out. They're just saying we're going to play Yankee Stadium until we find a permanent home.
Which has been going poorly.
Yeah, right. Not going well.
New York, they intended to have a stadium by the time they started play. This Yankee Stadium idea sort of came on last minute because they couldn't open up sites in Brooklyn. They couldn't open up sites at Belmont Park. So I think the stadium search is going to be a struggle, and I think they're going to be playing Yankee Stadium for a bit longer than they realize they might have to.
Well, it'll be cool to see exactly how long it goes. We're going to take a short break. Coming up, we'll be talking some basketball, Jason Kidd and the Miami Heat, and maybe some Ultimate as well. We'll see.
Slow down.
Slow down and move over.
And move over.
When you see lights, vests,
Or reflectors.
Please, give us some room. Slow down and move over.
when you need us.
We've got your back.
Do you have ours?
You got our back?
You got ours? You got our back? Please, slow down.
And move over.
Hi everybody, welcome back to What's It To Ya with Carter Woodeel and Jack Worth. And we'll be moving to some basketball now. Jason Kidd's tenure as head coach of the Brooklyn Nets hasn't exactly gone swimmingly. He was called for a technical foul in his first summer league game, and now he's been suspended for the first 2 games of the regular season for driving under the influence of alcohol. I'm interested to hear your opinion on this, Jack. Do you think he's going to be a good coach for the Brooklyn Nets?
When I heard the Nets were signing Jason Kidd as a coach, I was so excited. And I'll give you a couple reasons. I became a Nets fan 2001. So that was the first year they traded for Jason Kidd. The first year they went to the finals. Jason Kidd was the captain of that team, best player, and he led that team to 2 finals and a couple more playoff appearances. Jason Kidd has been the most iconic player in the Nets NBA history. There's no doubting that. So when the Nets signed him, I think it creates a buzz that I think is good for the team off the court. But I think on the court, it gives them something that they haven't had before. And I think last year a lot of the problem was coaching. I think Darren Williams is the kind of guy who doesn't get along with coaches. We've seen that in Utah. We saw that with Avery Johnson. Because Darren Williams respects talent. So I think for Darren Williams, it's hard for him to look at these 65-year-old guys who haven't played the game and give them the same kind of respect that he would give to Jason Kidd, who was his backup point guard for the U.S. team. They were at the Olympics together. They've played together. They're good friends. I think that it creates a trust with this coach that Williams has never had in his career before, which I think is good. And when you factor in the fact that the Nets have so many what you would call coaches on the court, they have these guys that are a presence in a locker room that it's okay to have a coach who will step back and a young coach who will step back and let those guys lead, because that's good for a team when you have those guys in the locker room that can motivate the team, and it doesn't need to come from the coach. In terms of the DUI, that's something that happened last summer. Obviously, that's not what you want hanging over your head at any point of the season, let alone to start a season. But I think that Jason Kidd has surrounded himself with capable assistants. Lawrence Frank, who's actually an ex-head coach of Jason Kidd's in the New Jersey years, more than capable of managing minutes for those first 2 games. And I think in the end, Jason Kidd is going to become maybe not the most strategic coach in basketball, but I think Jason Kidd brings a calming presence to the Nets and a presence that they haven't had in terms of excitement for a while.
I don't see how you can throw all this stuff at Jason Kidd before he's coached a regular season game. I just feel like you're saying, well, Darren Williams is going to trust him. The Nets are they're gonna rally around this guy. He's gonna be relatable. He's gonna work well with the players, and he's gonna have a great team. I'm not drinking the Jason Kidd Kool-Aid at this point. He was an incredible player, an incredible leader when the Nets went to those 2 NBA finals. But I feel like we can't assume that it's all going to be peaches and cream for the Nets because Jason Kidd was such a great player, and we can't assume that that's going to just immediately translate to him being a good coach. I feel like I need to see something from Jason Kidd, and right now what I've seen hasn't been very good. I mean, with the stuff that he's run into, you don't want your head coach to be suspended for the first 2 games of the season.
Yeah, but that's sort of that's not coaching. That happened last summer.
But it's
in
still,
terms of the technical foul during the summer league game, it's a summer league game. Come on.
So why would you get a technical foul in a summer league game, though? I mean, that's just crazy.
I don't care.
I
I have not been this excited for a Nets season ever. I don't think the Nets have had this kind of coach before. I think this coach is the right fit.
Right.
It's the right fit for this kind of team. If he was the coach 3 years ago with a team of young pieces and that needed to sort of be developed, that needed to have an old hand who sort of knew what he was doing in terms of player development, this wouldn't have been a good signing. But they have the type of team that just needs someone to let them be them, and I think that is perfect for what they got for Jason Kidd.
I feel like this creates a lot of buzz and a lot of hype around the team.
That's all about hype.
We're
all about hype.
It's extremely valuable for the New Jersey Nets, or for the Brooklyn Nets rather, but I haven't seen anything that jumps out at me that says this is going to translate into on-court success. Certainly not going to beat the Miami Heat.
No, they're not going to beat the Heat. Will anyone beat the Heat, really? No.
That's the real question.
It's not going to be the Nets, and I can say that with an unhappy heart. The Nets are not beating the Heat. But I think someone can beat the Heat. I don't know who yet, but the Heat were taken really close by the Spurs. And I don't know if this is me just wanting them to lose, which it definitely could be, but the Heat were taken really close to the Spurs. And I'm going to say this, is that if you take the Heat to 7 games and LeBron beats you, then you didn't beat the Heat because LeBron took over the game. But if you can take the Heat close and shut down LeBron and shut down Wade and make their role players beat you, that's how you beat the Heat. And that's what the Spurs did. And, Ray Allen hit the shot. They deserve to win. Ray Allen hit the shot. Ray Allen came through.
You said that's how you beat the Heat. The Spurs did not beat the Heat. Last time I checked, the Heat won the championship.
They lost because the role players came through, but Ray Allen is not always going to make that shot. Greg Oden is not the guy that the Heat should be relying on. So if you can make them rely on guys like Greg Oden and Chris Anderson and Mike Miller, that's how you can beat them. If they come out and do their thing, then the Heat are unstoppable.
But I agree. I mean, I agree that if you're gonna want to beat the Heat, that's what you're gonna have to do. Make them rely on their role players. I don't see it happening. I don't see the Miami Heat having to rely on the role players here. I feel like we've seen the past couple of years, but the Miami Heat have a turbo button that nobody else in the league has. You know, we saw in that deciding game against the Indiana Pacers. It's just they're able to come out and just play at a level that nobody else can contend with. And sometimes you're right, things can fall your way, and it can wind up leading up to the role players in the Miami Heat. And I know Ray Allen's not always going to make that shot, but he's going to make it pretty often, I think. I think that the Miami Heat, they're well built enough to withstand whatever the NBA is going to throw at them.
Now but I think the problem with the Heat is they have this turbo button, but we don't always see it used. I think they have this turbo button that they don't really know how to control.
Want to talk about the New York Jets? That's a team that we thought would be in far more decline than they actually have turned out to be this season. Geno Smith, a guy who many people thought was just the guy that they were throwing out there, wasn't going to have a good season, was going to be an embarrassing team for the New York Jets. How surprised are you at how they've performed?
How surprised am I? I think, personally, I'm not surprised. I think the Jets are a below-average NFL team. I think that going into the season, they were a below-average NFL team with fans that really like to think that they were a terrible NFL team. I mean, I think if you ask any Jets fan before the season, I think they were almost excited to tell you how bad they were going to be. Because that's the Jets. Those are the guys that will boo their draft pick before they even have heard it. So the Jets fans are quick to get down on their team. Obviously, I don't think the Jets are a playoff team. Have they won maybe a game or two more than I would have pegged them to? Yeah. But I think at the end of the year, if they finish 6-10 or 7-9, they became a below-average NFL team that maybe won a couple games here and there because Geno Smith is a better quarterback than Mark Sanchez.
Well, I mean, I think that's true. But the fact that Geno Smith and Mark Sanchez were battling for the quarterback job tells you what people thought Geno Smith was going to be. If you're saying, well, he's comparable to Mark Sanchez, maybe Mark Sanchez has a slight edge, and we're talking about Mark Sanchez here, that's not a good expectation. You lose Darrelle Revis, one of your most recognizable players, over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's like, I feel like this Jets team, and maybe it is the media frenzy, because I remember going on ESPN. I turned on ESPN to be SportsCenter, they're talking about Rex Ryan. I turned on ESPN News at SportsCenter, they're talking about Rex Ryan. I turned on ESPN2 with Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith talking about Rex Ryan. I turned on ESPN U, it's Colin Cowherd talking about Rex Ryan. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm really surprised by how this team is done. I mean, the expectations have been so low, not just for Jets fans, but nationally. This team was regarded as, well, they're an embarrassment. They have no good quarterback. They don't have any playmakers on defense, and I think that the fact that they are a below average NFL team is a pretty surprising thing.
I mean, when I hear embarrassment, I think Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jacksonville Jaguars are an embarrassment to NFL football.
Are the Jets
in the same league as Jacksonville Jaguars?
That was the expectation.
I don't think they are, though.
I think that was the expectation at the start of the year.
I think that was
at least
created.
comparable, at least slightly better.
No one in
the
the world is comparable to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
But that was the expectation.
Coach Curtin, get the Columbia High School team on the field as the Jaguars. That'd be a game. If Jimmy's not hurt, we give him a game. Spread is single digits.
I would buy tickets to that.
If we're home, all bets are off.
I mean, that's quite. Now that would be surprising. Talk about surprising football teams. Well, speaking of Columbia sports, you don't buy tickets to see Ultimate games, right?
You don't see Ultimate games. No one comes. And speaking of Columbia sports, Ultimate is not a Columbia sport. The sport invented at Columbia, not recognized by the New Jersey, Scholastic Athletic Association as being a sport, so it does not receive school funding. Not recognized either by the NCAA. So there aren't an NCAA tournament. You're not going to receive an ultimate scholarship. And although you don't receive funding from the school, CHS which is surprising to me, goes, I feel like, out of their way to disassociate themselves with the team that they helped create. They created the sport. And I mean, even the pep rally, upcoming pep rally, Frisbee is not a part of the pep rally. When asked, they were immediately shut down. Like, no, you're not part of the school. And I don't see where they may not receive school funding, but they wear Columbia on their shirts.
But I think there are pros and cons to saying, well, if we went and said, okay, well, Ultimate's going to be a varsity sport. The thing about Ultimate is that, you know, the spirit of the game, as you know, is a big deal. There aren't any referees. There are self-called fouls. If if this thing gets sanctioned by the NJSIAA and it becomes a varsity sport, well, now you're going to have to think about the further standardization procedures. And you're going to lose that spirit of the game aspect, I think, or at least it's going to be severely hurt. And that's a real con to moving up into the varsity.
I think no one in the ultimate community is asking for varsity recognition. I think the school could do more for the team. I think for example, the ultimate practices at Memorial Park, they have to deal with the rec department as opposed to Columbia going out and getting them a practice space. Again, the pep rally. I just don't understand the sport that we invented. It's sort of like shoved to the side. Don't talk.
Yeah, but you feel like, well, Ultimate's a club sport, and if we had some other club sport, wouldn't you want it to be treated the same way? I mean, I know that like, you know, when you realize that Ultimate is a sport that we invented, it doesn't really hold up. But the school has an argument in saying that, well, if this is not a varsity sport, you know, if this is not like a full-fledged Columbia sport, then we have other things that we need to take care of. They have standing, I think.
All right, we're going to close out the show with Carter's 30 seconds of final thoughts. Carter, what do you have for us today?
30 seconds of final thoughts. Well, it's just something that's really been annoying me as I've watched the National League Championship Series. I've been trying to take a look at the Dodgers hitter taking a swing, but he's obscured by the giant K-zone graphic on the right side of the screen of the TBS broadcast. Why is it there? Nobody likes that. I don't want to have to watch a pitch go over the plate on my high-definition TV and compulsively look to the right after every pitch. It's one of the most annoying things that I've seen on baseball TV this year, and I think it's an evidence of just how national TV and baseball, they don't mix very well. Well, that's our show. What's It to You with Carter Woodeel and Jack Worth. We hope you join us again next time we're on the air. Until then, have a good day.
Send in questions. Facebook group, facebook.com. What's It to You with Carter and Jack. We will be answering your questions on air. See you next time, guys.